Hi everyone, Stepan here. Today we are going to cover Jacob Aagaard's Positional Play. It's the second book in the GM preparation series, which consists of 6 books, or you might call them 6 workbooks, that are intended for, I want to say, tournament players first of all, and strong tournament players at that as well. So Positional Play is the second book. As Jacob Aagaard puts it himself, it's the most unique book in the series. And I can also say subjectively that it's either my favorite one or my second favorite one. I keep changing my mind between strategic play and positional play. So in the previous video, we talked about calculation, and Mr. Aagaard explained how to calculate, how to read books on calculation, how to read books on tactics, how to solve problems. Today we're going to talk about positional play. And first of all, I want to highlight the distinction between positional and strategic play. As you're going to hear in the interview, we talked about that difference a bit. But basically, when it comes to this series, there is no difference. You can usually hear people say, oh, strategic play is connected to pieces, pawn structure is connected to positional play. And that's roughly how I've categorized the books on Chessreads. But just to make it easier, when it comes to these two books, strategic play and positional play, there is no difference. The difference is in what the book teaches and the difficulty of the positions. So positional play is a very rare type of book. The most important reason for that is you can get tactics online. You can solve mates in 2 online. You can, why to play and when, you can do that online. You can also get hundreds of books that have tactical problems. Books with strategic and positional problems are extremely rare, and that's why I like it. The book is based on his training with Boris Gelfand. Same as calculation. Gelfand was preparing for the 2008-2009 World Championship cycle, and Grandmaster Aagaard was coaching him. Calculation came about because he had a collection of exercises that Gelfand was solving, and the same goes for positional play. Now, the reason this is one of my favorite chess books is his concept of 3 questions. And I've recorded separate videos on those, on hanging pawns. I've talked about them. I use them in my own play. And I use them in my own training. I use them with my own students. I think the concept he introduced is exceptionally useful. So here's 3 questions. Where are the weaknesses? What's the worst placed piece? And what does my opponent want to do? Are to be used in positions that are, not just hard to understand, but positions in which it's unclear, it's not immediately obvious what you should be doing. There's no, your king isn't too unsafe and you're not forced to immediately defend. You don't have 5 pieces next to your opponent's king and it's not clear that you have to mate them. You have castled, so it's not clear that you have to castle straight away. So we're talking about relatively complex positions, although the really complex ones are addressed in strategic play. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So his 3 questions, when you find yourself in a position that you are struggling to understand, answer them. And I love what Mr. Aagaard mentions, that very often it's not hard to find the answers. It's hard to ask ourselves the correct questions. And I think that's a great way of putting it. So positional play, same as every other book in the series, except for Thinking Inside the Box, is a workbook. So you will find exercises and you will solve exercises. And when it comes to chess books, there are 2 types. Type number 1, a chess book that adds to your knowledge base. This is not that kind of book. This is a book for advanced players who already understand the basic positional and strategic concepts, the basic themes, who are already familiar with, planning and stuff like that. It's the second type of book. It's a workbook that develops your skill, which in my opinion is way more important. People often accumulate tons of knowledge that never really transfers into a skill. And over the board, whether you've read something matters very little. It's almost completely irrelevant. What matters is that you can actually perform, play well, find the correct plans, improve the worst piece, or whatever else. So this is a book that's going to teach you exactly that. It's going to improve your skill level when it comes to complex decisions, planning, improving your pieces, understanding the pawn structures, and thinking prophylactically. That's one other point I would like to address. Strong players often spend more time thinking about what their opponent is going to do. Weaker players, such as myself, tend to emphasize their own plans. And you could say it might be reductio ad absurdum, but a good chess player is paranoid over the chessboard. So you have to constantly think about what your opponent's about to do. You have to constantly keep preventing that. And unless you're playing, a grandmaster or a very strong grandmaster, very often your opponent's going to hang themselves. So positional play. Now we're going to hear what Mr. Aagaard has to say about the book. It's my pleasure to have been able to interview him. He's one of my favorite chess authors, and I believe one of the best chess coaches ever, which is proven by his work with I don't know, Nodirbeck, Sam Shankland, Boris Gelfand, and many strong Indian players as well. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the interview. Let's talk about positional play now. Excuse me. Was positional play before strategic play, or am I wrong?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So positional play was also inspired by preparing Gelfand for the World Championship. Is that what you said?
It's true, yes.
Okay. So is the material also what he used to train with?
Yeah, well, I sent the material to Boris and he solved it, yes. And I think in that book will be very close to 100% of it that he solved at some point. So the book is probably that's the most original of the 5 exercise books. Since I introduced this idea of the 3 questions, which I had already been used for more than 10 years at the time as a coach. So it came from I came across the idea very early on that we're very good at finding answers, but finding out what the real question is often the problem.
Yeah.
And I made a list of what are the relevant questions. There are other interesting questions, like which side of the board should I play on? Should I play for dynamics or should I play for tactics? Sundberg Hansen gave me a fantastic question. How could I ever lose this position? If you have a good position, how could I ever lose this position? It's a great question.
Yeah.
If you're sort of sitting generally saying, like, how could things go wrong? Okay, they could go wrong there, there, and there. Okay, I'm aware of it now. Hopefully that will not happen. And other things. But anyway, I ended with 3 questions, which is where the weakness is, which is the worst place piece, and what's the opponent's idea. And the order of them don't really matter. So 2 of them is for both sides. So where the weakness is in the opponent's positions, where the weakness is in my position, what's the worst place piece for the opponent, what's the worst place piece for mine. And the opponent's idea doesn't really work the other way around. Yeah. That's my idea. That's where we hope to end up. And the idea of these 3 questions is that we all, again, have a lot of chess in us, a lot of knowledge, but somehow we have a tendency to tunnel vision in a random place decided by our intuition, where if we just sort of opens the goddess a bit more and like, let's look at pieces, let's look at the structure, let's look at the opponent, which is everything. Pieces, pawns, opponent, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole game. Summarized into 3 questions. If you just focus your attention on these things a little bit in an active way, it's very easy to answer the questions most of the time. Sometimes no good answer comes of it, and you just move on. And I have found many times with, let's say, Shanklin, let's say up to Satorov, like decent players that I have coached, that I just say, okay, just go through the 3 questions. Oh yeah, I just have to play this. I'm such an idiot. So it's just a focus thing. Of course, it doesn't teach positional or strategic patterns on the board like that. They are to apply existing things. Again, this is presuming you already know a lot of chess, you have a lot of experience with chess, but you need to be able to access it and need to have a better thought process. Again, it's very much directed on thought process. So the book is divided into these 3 chapters, explaining them, a little bit of textbook, then some exercises for all 3 themes, and then a general collection of exercises at the end. It's the one book that is that the computers have been most evil against. Let's say it like that. The computers have tried to destroy it. So what I mean by that is the computers will now find more and more things to be everything is equal in value.
Yeah.
Because an advantage means the opponent has problems to solve. A winning position means he cannot solve the problems. A big advantage means that the problem are long lasting and they're very difficult to solve. But they're not necessarily enough to win the game or for him to be forced to lose. A small advantage, which is often very, very important in chess, is like I can pose the opponent problems, real problems. And Stockfish says, ha! I can solve everything. And therefore it's sort of, of course, in these books were checked with the engine in 2012.
Yeah.
And this is 13 years ago now. And what we have to remember is that the engine became much stronger. So they see some things that we don't see. But mostly for this book here is that it just solves all problems. So many positions, if you do them now with Stockfish, everything is just 0. But the actual value of the book is still there for practical human beings. So it's like for updating books is the only one I don't want to update. I think that book is as it is. I could write a new book where the exercises would be much more convincing for people checking the wood engine. But if you're not checking with the engine, if you're sitting thinking about it, if you have other ideas, you want to check them, you check them afterwards with the engine and say that's also possible. That's not necessarily a bad experience as a reader. I don't think that's damaging, but I still think it's in some ways of the 5 exercise books, although it's the one that computers hate, it's maybe the one I like the best.
I have a question about the 3 questions. I actually, a while back, around 6 months ago, recorded a whole video on hanging pawns about the 3 questions. And I think reading positional play and learning about using those 3 questions was one of the biggest eye-openers for me in chess. But I still struggle applying them during tournament games. So here's what I did. I actually remembered the day I borrowed this book from a friend, and I was sitting in a bar in Zagreb. It was raining outside. I had my very small chessboard, and I read the intro, started by reading the questions, and then did some problems. And then when I finished the book, I took a random tournament played in Budapest in 2017. I took 200 games, set them to move 20 for white, and solved those 200 positions on move 20 for white using your 3 questions. Of course, if it was a simple recapture or if the position was forcing, I wouldn't do it. But on average, maybe 3/4 of them, the questions were applicable. And I found myself, as you pointed out, applying the knowledge I already had more easily by asking the 3 questions. And I did that for that one tournament, then I started doing it with my own students. I told them to do that. And then I would finish a tournament game and I would come home, I would start analyzing, I would reach a position in which if I had asked myself the 3 questions, I would have played the best move. And in analysis, I always go through my own games without the engine the first time I go through them. I would find,
which is a very good idea.
yeah, I think not. I think turning on the engine during your first
You turn off your
analysis,
own brain.
yeah,
That's as simple as that.
you lose a lot of value because you do. But my question is, how do I force myself to apply those questions if I have a reasonable amount of time on the clock? There were some positions I had more than an hour, and
Okay, so let me first establish clearly what the idea was of them. So the idea of these questions came from the situation of me wanting to be able to explain things from students where I would say, but this is the best move, and they ask why, and I'm like, I need a language to sort of explain things, and I wanted to break things into to elements, and that's basically a lot of what I do in my work and my writing is I try to find the elements, or try to find sort of the hidden things, like the question, what is calculation, or what is positional play, what is strategic play, why are they, what is the difference between them, um, and all these kind of things, and I sort of trying to break things down. And the idea was always that if we have something we can talk about, then we see the same things on the board, see the same patterns, we can have a conversation, and then over time, a lot of these things will become a part of your intuition, your pattern intuition, your whether abstract, visual, or sequential, whatever. And when I say sequential intuition, I mean like moves that normally fit together, like little sequences of moves.
yeah,
Um, so my idea was always that this is a way we build up better positional understanding, better intuition, and a part of the goal is to be able to make moves instantly that before we didn't understand. However, it can also be a very good tool to solve. And when we get to talk about thinking inside the box, then part of the box thing is that it's a toolbox. And one of the tools down there is the three questions. And yeah, you have to, if you want to be able to use it, you have to sort of have the, you don't want to use it on every move.
of course,
Most
yeah.
people would go insane. But you sort of have to understand when is a good time to think of this, and you have to have a trigger that makes you think of it.
Can I just stop you for 1 second and ask you about my solution to what you're about to say?
Yeah, you say your solution after I say mine, and
Oh,
then
okay.
Because mine is very simple, because it's based on standard psychology, which is three steps. So the first one is you realize that you made a mistake afterwards through analysis. The second is you realize you make a mistake um, right after you do it. And the third one is you realize you're about to make a mistake. So there's these normal steps. And the starting point comes with your analysis, like, I should have used this, I should have used this. And if you do that when you're sitting at home, now if you're reasonably intelligent and reasonably well functioning, then suddenly during the game you're like, why don't I use my tools? And then over time you will get to the, well, maybe I should use my tool before I make my move. And there's some various triggers you can use. So there's we'll get to talk about strategic play. We'll talk about 4 different types of decisions. One of them is simple decisions, which is very much covered in this book, where you're trying to improve your position. And for these things, it's a very useful tool. It can also be used in other situations if you feel stuck. But generally, for me, the trigger would be to be feeling any kind of stuck. I don't know what to do. Oh, let me just ask these 3 questions. Okay, now at least I have some sort of idea which way to look. Now, let's hear a much better suggestion from you,
No,
because I'm sure it's coming.
I, I, I don't think it's a much better suggestion. It's the best I have. It's not necessarily how to trick myself into being able to apply the 3 questions when they are necessary. I sort of tried to devise a system for splitting every chess position, other than simple endgames and early openings, into 3 categories in which I think I should have a different approach. And I split them into what I call rookie 1 positions. Those are the simple positions. You can make a decision fairly quickly. If you can castle, you castle. If there's an open file, you consider which rook to put on the open file. You don't invest too much time. Then the second category is, I call them brute force positions, positions that unless you calculate and precisely, you will likely make a mistake, and no amount of planning can save you from doing that. So those focus on being able to go through a lot of variations and a lot of branches precisely. And the third type of positions are complex positions, and those I approach answering your three questions. So basically,
And there's a fourth category, because the three categories you mentioned, they're all mentioned in strategic play in the beginning of the
yeah,
book. But there's the fourth one, which is automatic decisions, the positions where there is no other serious move, and you should play your move without too much thinking.
right. So this was positional play. Tomorrow we're going to talk about strategic play, which is the third book in the series. I'm also going to share my interview with Mr. Aagaard on strategic play. I would love your feedback on positional play. If you have read it, please, don't write a review in the comments below, but just share your thoughts. What do you think about the book? Do you think it was difficult for your level, and what's your level? And what do you think about my assessment of the book? I would love to hear your thoughts. Also, if you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe, whatever else. This is a new channel. I'm trying to improve what I can. I know that there were flaws in the first video and in this one. My equipment isn't optimal. Where I am isn't optimal. I don't have a recording place yet. Lucia and I don't really have a flat. We're sort of homeless, moving from place to place until we manage to figure something out. In any case, support the channel if you can by simply watching the videos and helping me improve them. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow with the next review, and stay tuned for more Chessbox. Bye.